Welcome, everyone. This is Rebecca Rios-Cohn, Director of Arigato International New York office, and we're welcoming you to our webinar today on safeguarding children's dignity online. We have a superb panel today, and we hope very much that you will enjoy it. I will be discussing or presenting the panelists in just 1 minute, but please note that this is being recorded, and we are also going to have an opportunity at the end of this presentation, at the end of the presentations, for you to ask any questions. And that should be done by you in the chat box that is on your control panel. You will look at on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a place where you can ask questions. It says webcam questions and so forth. So please do ask any questions because we have a superb panel this morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you may be today. This webinar is part of a series of webinars that Arigato International has been organizing in recent months. We also wanted you to know that Arigato, for those of you who are not familiar with us, also launched very recently, obviously, a campaign to raise awareness about the COVID-19 pandemic, and that this is part of that campaign, to raise awareness about online safety for children during this pandemic, which has been a major problem and is increasing, and this is why we gathered our panelists who are experts in the field. First, we will listen to Mr. John Carr. John Carr is well known to a lot of you. He's a global expert on online safety for children and in general. He is a visiting senior fellow at the London School of Economics and Political Science and a founding director of the British Internet Watch Foundation. He's also a former member of the advisory board of InHope, the Global Association of Hotlines. He's an advisor to the Council of Europe on matters connected to the Lanzarote Convention of the Council of Europe on the protection of children against sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. He's a former member also of Microsoft's Policy Advisory Board for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and a former member of the Advisory Council of the Family Online Safety Institute in Washington, D.C., and he's also a member of the Advisory Council of Beyond Borders in Canada, and as well as a member of the advisory panel on children's viewing of the British Board of Film Classification. He has many other extraordinary achievements, but we will let him share his expertise with you. Then that presentation will be followed by a member of our youth committee of the Global Network of Religions for Children, and this will be announced whether it will be our youth committee member Ikran or Samir. We are still trying to confirm who will be representing the GNRC Youth Committee this morning, or this afternoon or evening, wherever you may be. In any event, following Ikran, we will be listening to Milena Grillo. Milena Grillo is from Costa Rica. She has a wealth of experience as well, and you will hear her wealth of experience in representing Pan y Amor, which is an NGO in Costa Rica. She's a child rights scholar, well known also in Latin America and abroad. And she's a law graduate with a master's degree in social and family violence. She has advocated for children and adolescent rights for governmental and non-governmental organizations, and has also specialized in cooperation agencies in that region of Central America. And she has served on many boards and initiatives, including as a representative of EGPAT to the Global Study on Child Sexual Exploitation in Travel and Tourism. And she was the Latin American representative on the International NGO Council on Violence Against Children. We're very pleased to have Milena with us, and she will, of course, be speaking from from Costa Rica today. Then following Milena, we will be listening to someone from a whole different region. That is Shirani El Satsinge. Shirani has actually stood in for Maitre Malwategoda from representing Sarvodaya, an NGO that's quite well known in Sri Lanka. And Shirani is an expert as well in this field. She is the Deputy General Manager of Sarvodaya Fusion. That is the information communication technology arm of Sarvodaya Shramadana movement. Sarvodaya Fusion works hand in hand with government agencies, corporations, communities, and international development agencies to support education, economic, and social development. And it's being assisted by many donor organizations in projects which include companies like Microsoft, Facebook, and other government institutions. She is also involved in an awareness program that we would like to hear much about, called IT Yahamanga. And this is to educate school students in the responsible and safety handling of internet and social media, which has become a highly popularized program exposed to over 80,000 students. And I'm wondering, and she will let us know, is that just at the national level, or is that at the regional level as well? So as you can see, we have two panelists from different regions of the world, and then our global expert, John Carr. And then after that, we will have our other youth representative from the Global Network of Religions for Children, and I will introduce him or her at that moment. I think it will be Samir, who is from Pakistan. And I just wanted to add that we will also see two short videos during this first session that have been prepared by the members of the Youth Committee. And we are looking forward to that, because the idea of this panel is not only to raise awareness about online safety, but also look at the role of religious communities in this effort, as well as hear from the children and youth themselves. We wanted to give an opportunity for our youth committee members to express their concerns and have their voices heard. So without much further ado, let's go into the first session with our first speaker, Mr. John Carr. Please, John, you now have the floor. Thank you. You are muted, John, please. Either you or someone unmute John, please.
Okay, I've just been unmuted. So I need I need a button to press so I can upload my PowerPoint, I believe. Here we are. Show my screen. Can everybody see it now?
We are not seeing you yet. We are not seeing there we go. Now we can see it. Hope all our viewers out there also see the PowerPoint that John has just put up on safeguarding children's dignity.
Safeguarding children's dignity in the time of COVID. And I'm speaking to you from London, where the COVID crisis has been a huge thing. Over 45,000 people have died, according to the official figures. But everybody, the government accept the real figure is more likely to be nearer to 60,000. All of the schools have been in lockdown, so no children have been going to school. And any and every way you look at it, it has been a major drama here in the United Kingdom, as it has been elsewhere. But I will be referring to UK figures at different points in this presentation, but I will try to stay focused on the global. And here's so what's been happening to children during lockdown? Well, UNESCO, I'm sure we all know what UNESCO is, that critical arm of the UN. It estimated that over 1 billion school students and pupils, 1.184 billion school students and pupils have been affected by lockdown, and that's 67.6%, over 2/3 of every child attending school in 143 countries has been excluded from school to some degree or another because of lockdown. And that's a particular concern for those of us who are involved with the child protection area of work, because schools play an absolutely pivotal role in a great many countries in safeguarding in the safeguarding of children. In the UK, 1 in 5 of every child who is referred to our child protection services, those are the official services provided by the state, 1 in 5 of all of those referrals comes to the referral agency, the social services agency, from arising from a report that's been made by a school teacher or by somebody in the school's administration. So obviously, if children are not at school, the potential for that type of referral or those types of things to happen reduces to zero or very, very close to zero, because the teachers or the school welfare people can't see the children to try and or listen to them or speak to them to see if they're experiencing any difficulties that needs help elsewhere. It's also particularly concerning, or has been particularly concerning, because a lot of vulnerable children with maybe physical disabilities or mental handicaps of some kind or another, a lot of the support that they receive from the statutory agencies and from charities, including faith community-run organisations, a lot of that is provided in or is centred on the school itself. So that's another reason why lockdown in particular has been a particular problem for those of us who are concerned about protecting children's health, welfare and well-being. The third area, and I have to say right now, certainly in Britain, probably the largest single area of concern, certainly the one that's getting the most coverage in the media, the one that's being talked about most by politicians, is the way in which lockdown has highlighted educational inequalities. And that's been true even within richer countries. If I clicked on this link, which you can see on the PowerPoint, and by the way, I should have said, you don't feel you have to make notes if you were thinking about doing that, about some of the things I've been saying. You can have this PowerPoint when this presentation is over. All of the links and all of the numbers will be in there for you. But even within a country like Britain, what we found is that 30% of children attending school were unable to complete homework assignments, or were unable to engage with remote teaching, because a lot of the schools try to provide some kind of educational provision remotely to children at home. But a very substantial proportion of children from poorer families were unable to participate. Amongst richer families, only 1% of the children, it was found, didn't have either sufficient bandwidth at home or the right kinds of devices to be able to benefit from the remote education that the schools tried to provide during lockdown. Oh dear, what happened? Wait a minute. My PowerPoint has just disappeared. I don't know what to do.
All right, you know what? Do you have your notes? Just continue talking, because
I've got it.
Yeah.
Is it back up? Can you see it now?
The challenges of technology. Yeah, I can see it.
Can you?
We can see it, Joe.
Okay.
It's a different format, but go ahead, continue.
All right, no, let me. Okay. Obviously, children have been spending much more time than usual, than they usually would online. and that's highlighted. And if you were to click on that link on point number 4, it takes you to a study done in Canada showing how sexual predators and other people with what you might call evil intent towards children have been taking advantage of the fact that children are spending even more time than usual on the internet, and this has given them, predators and so on, even greater opportunities to make contact with them, groom them, or whatever. But it's not just been the action of sexual predators, worrying though that is, that's been a matter of concern. It's also been the fact of lockdown itself. Save the Children did a survey involving, as you can see, 6,000 parents and children from 5 different countries: America, Finland, Germany, Spain, and UK. And in that study, it found many children struggling with feelings of isolation and boredom, tension of various kinds that wasn't always easy for parents to address. Oxford University did a similar survey with younger children aged 4 to 10 years of age, and they too found that the simple fact of being in lockdown, not being able to get out and about like they would normally do, was causing anxiety and a range of psychological concerns, even amongst children of that age. In the first month, going back to the theme about more active threats to children's welfare and health, in the first month of lockdown, the British hotline, and Rebecca mentioned earlier, I was a founding director of it back in 1996. In the first month of lockdown, they recorded nearly 9 million attempts coming from people within the United Kingdom trying to reach child sex abuse material over the internet, which is a much, much higher rate than normal. And again, reflects the fact that people are locked down and therefore using the internet much more than they would otherwise do. Turning to the United States, in April of last year, as you can see, 1 million reports of child sexual exploitation found their way to NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Washington, D.C. The same month this year, so early on in lockdown, over 4 times that amount were being reported to NCMEC. And by the way, what reported means in this context, usually, or to a very large degree, means being found by companies like Facebook and Google on their own platforms as a result of proactive searching. So it suggests that people were going onto their platforms and engaging in that type of traffic or exchange of child sex abuse material to 4 times the extent that they were in the same month the previous year. Europol, which is the kind of European police agency for the still 28 member states of the European Union, highlighted increased sexual activity by sexual predators. The police in London, the London police is actually the biggest single police force in Europe, reported a significant increase in arrests being made of people, almost always men, involved in child sex abuse activities. And calls to our domestic abuse helpline were up by 50% after the first 3 weeks in lockdown. And the domestic abuse helpline dealt with all ranges of abuse, so certainly including children as well as other family members. I hope you notice the way I'm varying the way that my presentation appears on the screen. 32% increase in calls to our national child helpline. In fact, it's called Childline. Every single child in Britain knows the number. It's on every bus, many bus stops and so on around the place. Everybody knows it. 32% increase in calls by children, that is, to the national helpline, and those calls are very carefully recorded, and those are the calls that they recorded there, which were concerned with abuse. So children ringing up because they felt they were threatened by abuse at home. First 2 weeks of June, Stop It Now UK, I know there's an equivalent body in the United States, reported a 71% increase in calls compared with the same period last year, and 388 of these were from callers who were concerned about their own sexual thoughts and feelings towards children. 214, in other words, a great majority of those calls were from people who hadn't called before. And 1 in 5 people vulnerable people, so that's people with an acknowledged existing psychiatric condition of some kind, said that they had considered some form of self-harm during lockdown. So the issues have all been there. I'm sorry, last but by no means least, as this is an issue I've spent a great deal of time working on in the last few years, the traffic to pornography websites has gone up enormously. And within that traffic, within that range of people going to pornography websites, there is a substantial number of children who are not being shielded from some truly appalling content that is on sites like MindGeek, Pornhub, and so on. So what we've seen, in a way, is a perfect storm. If you can hear my doorbell ringing, I apologize, and I'm going to ignore it. During the pandemic, children around the world have been caught in a perfect storm. But the weather conditions which created that storm have been developing for a very long time. And those conditions are not going to go away or change just because lockdown has ended. It might seem like that because there will be a less compressed time frame. But if there ever is a new normal, it won't necessarily be a good or a better normal. If governments and industry had acted more decisively sooner, fewer children would have been harmed during the pandemic than is inevitably turning out to be the case because of that prior neglect. Now, there's no point in blaming people. Hindsight is a wonderful gift, but it can too easily push you towards being harsh and unforgiving. And there's no point in wagging fingers and shouting at people because that isn't going to help us to move forward. But equally, we have to be clear that there can be no escaping the truth and urgency of addressing the long-standing challenges with the internet as an environment for children, which have simply been exposed and magnified by the existence of the pandemic and the consequential lockdown into which so many hundreds of millions of children, 1.18 billion children around the world, have been forced to go into. They've been forced to go into that lockdown. And it's urgent because we're also very close to the point where I think access to the internet will be considered to be a basic right for all children. I know it might sound odd after having given you a litany of problems and harms, but the fact is we still need to ensure that children in the 21st century have the great gifts and opportunities that the internet presents. Because so much of modern educational and school administration has shifted or is shifting online. A great deal of young people's social and cultural life has shifted online. Not to have access to the internet makes you the weird kid or the poor kid. And access, by the way, very obviously means bandwidth and an appropriate device. And the global economic downturn poses an obvious threat to the fulfillment of the SDGs that Rebecca mentioned earlier. So finally, the role for faith communities. That global economic downturn, linked with an increasingly unstable set of relationships between the world powers, is going to make the political agenda much more complicated in the near to medium future. And it's going to be a lot easier for both industry and government to marginalize and deprioritize some of the key challenges to children's safety and well-being, which have been highlighted during lockdown. And here is where faith communities can play both a practical part, that's helping parents that they work with and children in their communities to avoid some of the hazards that I've highlighted or referred to. But crucially, certainly from a policy point of view, at a strategic level, the unique moral authority of the leaders of faith communities will be hugely important in trying to push forward better policies for children and children's welfare at the national and indeed international level. Within the United States and Europe, there are big initiatives being debated right now where that type of leadership from faith communities, I think, could be incredibly important. And I'll just end on this note. I think I'm just on time. A particular challenge for us all is going to be how to address the problem of encryption, specifically in respect of Facebook Messenger and Instagram, but also more generally. Encryption services are spreading into a whole range of areas that nobody ever anticipated they would spread into. And these, in my view, are posing an enormous challenge to all of those of us who work to make children's experience of the internet better and safer. Ta-da!
John. Thank you very much. That was very, very good. Provided us with a lot of food for thought. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our youth committee member, Ikran, from Kenya. Thank you, Ikran, for joining us. I know you weren't feeling well, but I'm so happy you could finally be with us today. And Ikran is a youth committee member of the Global Network of Religions for Children, and she also will be introducing a video that the youth committee has prepared. I'm sure you all have many questions for John, and we will have a chance later to ask John some questions. So please, Ikran, now if you could introduce yourself and introduce the video at this time. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Ikran, GNRC Youth Member 2020 from Kenya. So for the past few 3 weeks, we as the youth committee members have been undergoing through an online program where we were taught about what cyberbullying is, we were taught about what sextortion is, things to do with sexting and how to take care of yourself online. So right now, as we all know, during this pandemic, a lot of things are being done online. A lot of activities are being done online, and the parents are willingly purchasing the gadgets for their kids to access the internet because most of the classes right now are online. So this gives the children a chance to surf the internet more, and they are more exposed to the dangers of the internet. So I would like to outline some of the risks that are associated with being online and some of the risks that children are prone to face online. So some of these risks include online grooming, whereby cyber predators might try to manipulate children online and win their trust easily and brainwash them. Something else is I would also like to talk about chat rooms. These are where children have a lot of virtual friends online, and a child might be thinking that he is
Did you
chatting
ring on
with
the doorbell a
another
minute
child.
ago?
Pardon?
No, it's because I'm.
So I was talking about chat rooms. I was saying children have a lot of virtual friends online, and a child might be thinking that he's chatting with a fellow child or a fellow teenager, whereas the child might be chatting with a cyber criminal who only wants to manipulate him. So I think that's a risk that children face online. Something else is scams. So most of us children, we are not age smart to identify whether this person is, whether this is a fake account that you're getting DMs from, whether this is a spam, as in we don't know how to identify spammers. So that's a threat also. Something else is posting, like we don't like children do not know what to post online. They post anything online without privacy, and so if sometimes they can be threatened by cyber criminals online. They can be told to for example, when a child sends a pic to someone, so the person can threaten that kid that I will send this pic online and it will be viewed by a lot of people. This person will be getting favors from this child because he or she has that pic from the child. So those are some of the many risks that are associated with being online, and also parents not monitoring what is happening online. Yeah, I would like to present the videos that my fellow committee members made on the risks and the risks children are prone to face online. So I invite you to watch the videos.
Warm greetings to everyone. This is Arish from India.
This is Ikran from Kenya, GNRC youth member.
Hi everyone, my name is Samir and I am from Pakistan and I am the member of GNRC Youth Committee 2020.
This is Lavnes, a member of GNRC Youth Committee 2020 from Tanzania. I want to share with you about online safety.
The COVID-19 virus has impacted all aspects of our life, with the children spending most of their time online.
Now, internet is a part of life and playing an important role in the educational and social development of children. However, children are also exposed to online sexual exploitation. For example, cyberbullying, online sexual abuse, blackmailing, joining unknown social media groups, and sharing passwords with friends can put children at risk.
So one of the risks that children face online are random people contacting them, random people texting them online, DMs from fake accounts, people following them on and putting links on their profiles that lead to disastrous websites.
Many young people are the victim of cyberbullying. This is because we don't have enough education on how to use these online platforms, because we're not very closely to our parents. Sometimes we're not keeping our personal information privately. Sometimes we are the victim without knowing that we are the victim, and this destroys us mentally.
Using technology, anything can happen anytime and anywhere. Teach your children to think twice before whatever they post on net, and the consequences those posts could have on others if they are unkind or mean.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent video. Thank you, Samir and Ikran, for preparing it. And now we will go to our next speaker. And again, for those of you who are viewing this webinar, you can ask your questions in the questions box on the right side of your control panel. And we will have a session later during this webinar for you to ask those questions, and we will have the panelists answer them. In any event, we will move along now to listen to Milena Grillo. Milena, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you to the Arigato Foundation for this wonderful invitation, the possibility to be here, and my salute to my colleagues, my young colleagues and less young colleagues in this panel. It's wonderful to be with you here. Since the beginning of the never-ending, powerful attraction of children with ICT, with internet and the social networks, which I tend to believe begins at birth, the first things that came to the adult mind in terms of online risk spotlighted the children themselves, with all of us pointing our fingers to their shortages in terms of reasonable behavior. What has concerned us? Well, in terms of contents in the net, we expected them to process and take distance of harmful contents, including fake data, and it's not happening. In terms of contact, we expected them to identify and reject harmful contacts, and it's not occurring. In terms of conduct, we expect them to know better than placing themselves in harmful situations. In terms of commerce, we expected them navigating unharmed through fake information, fraud, and hacking and gambling. In terms of cyber delinquency, we expect them to walk away unharmed from grooming, sextortion, self-generated child abuse images, and so. Excuse me. More recently, abundant evidence has been produced, and we have seen ourselves in the ethical and logical need to rethink through the problem in a more comprehensive way, to begin questioning such a plain, adult-centric, adult-serving, articulated response that seemed to place most of the blame for the online risk on the children themselves and their shortages, and most of the solutions on parents restricting their connectivity and invading their privacy, resulting in parent-child relations drifting apart, which is exactly what we don't need or want now. The need emerged to start factoring a set of other intervening elements relating to child online safety since the pre-pandemic world and to date. These factors are children of all ages traveling along the multiple avenues cyberspace presents them with, convinced that they are fit for the job when they are not. Not because they don't care, but because we have not prep them adequately to be safe, responsible, and productive participants of the digital ecosystem as they deserve. Families leaving children surfing the nets alone, still considering internet as a safe place for them to spend time while at home, keep busy, leaving parents free to take care of more important things, secretly convince the parents that their children know better than them whenever it has to do with the digital stuff. Offenders taking advantage of children's and parents' caretakers' misconception of reality to make the cyberspace their preferred crime playground. Related private sector showing ambivalence in their potential to be a key piece in putting a halt of the problem. Inscription that Dr. Carr just mentioned one example. States not considering this expression of violence a priority under the national crime policy, and then society, all of ourselves, moving too slow in joining the cause of in a significant way. What has been done based on this new departing framework in our region, Latin America? Well, training programs for parents and child caretakers and children as well have been implemented. Staff from public institutions with mandates related to family, women, and or children issues have integrated child online safety in their working agendas. Legislation has been updated to include the specific online crimes affecting children. Law enforcement agencies have undergone a specialized training. Technology innovation have been developed and applied to crime investigation and prosecution. Hotlines and helplines have been established to reporting cases and suspicions. New partners have entered the arena with technology giants and internet providers contributing their part, and we have demanded them their engagement in facilitating implementation of norms and rules to make the ecosystem safer for children with partial success, I believe. And then also, finally, we have all promoted the installation of multi-stakeholders, bodies, councils, and working groups, and trusted the design and implementation of national strategies and plans. What have we learned while doing this? Well, we have learned that all children are exposed to online violence and abuse, but not all of them are equally exposed. The very same three elements of vulnerability before sexual exploitation and abuse offline, as identified through sound research work, including David Finkelhorn's abuse precondition model, stand for child online victimization. There is no children in the world. There is no one adult available and able in the child inner circle to act as an external inhibitor and prevent the abuse from happening. The child that presents one or more of the three specific abuse risk conditions is isolated with poor community network. He lacks of adequate age and context-sensitive self-care information, and he or she lives under the control and dominion of an in-house exploiter. We have learned that parents, caretakers, and adults in general apply a different set of safety rules for child online interaction than for physical interaction. thinking and acting as if there were two separate worlds, the digital world and the physical world, that do not necessarily converge when their children interaction refers. What have we learned? We have learned that the fact is that the very same expression of sexual abuse and exploitation occurring in the physical world occur in the virtual world. Very commonly, the abuse starts in one of these worlds and gets perfected in the other world. There is just increased anonymity, access, outreach, permanence, impunity about what happens in the virtual dimension. There is, and the last thing, the most important thing that we have is that there is little to nothing that we have learned is that there is little to nothing that we can do to protect children and to disrupt this heinous crime if we are not successful in engaging both the children themselves and the parents are caretakers in preventing and confronting online violence in general and child online abuse and exploitation in particular. And then, of course, there is the COVID-19 effect, imposing new social coordinates and building upon these social gaps and vulnerable traits, just as my colleagues have properly illustrated earlier. What motivates us to be with you this morning? Well, there are also good news that I would like to share. There is research showing that adult-informed mediation of children interaction in the digital world works as protection factor from online child sexual abuse, just as it does in the physical world. Parents and child caretakers need to be educated, not in computer skills and competences, just in parenting for the safe, responsible use of the digital world by the children under their care. Child caretakers are easy to find through the institution they work for. Families in general are elusive. Where are the families? Where can we reach them? Families in at-risk populations are everywhere and nowhere. Faith-based communities, teachers, and civil society organizations, we are in a unique position to enter the equation, to fill in this gap and do the job. So this is, in fact, not a presentation. This is no more than 10 minutes long, urgent call and invitation for all of you to do so. We need the work of each one of the people here in this audience to make this heinous crime end for children in their life. Thank you very much. I hope I met the time.
Thank you very much, Milena. That was very good, and we appreciate your participation today. Sadly, your camera was not on, so when we have our question and answer period, you can maybe turn on your camera.
Okay.
At that point, I'm sure you will get some questions. That was very helpful, and we are trying to identify what are some recommendations that we can make from this webinar and move forward with them. So thank you very much for some good news as well. And now I would like to introduce Shirani Elasinge. She's from Sarvodaya. All of the bios of our speakers and panelists will be on our website, on Arigato International's website, as well as the documents and PowerPoints that we are referring to. So Shirani is replacing at the last minute someone else who is from Sarvodaya as well. So please, Shirani, tell us about what Fusion Sarvodaya is doing to address these issues. Thank you. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. And I would like to start by introducing what is Sarvodaya Fusion. Sarvodaya Fusion is the ICT for Development arm of Sarvodaya, which is the largest and the oldest social service organization in Sri Lanka. If I'm to tell a little more about Sarvodaya Fusion, our mission is e-empowerment of communities. And doing so, we design and deliver programs providing digital literacy, digital access and digital benefits to various community segments in the country. So let me tell you a little bit of about the country. Sri Lanka is a small island having a population of 21 million and having an internet penetration of almost 50%. So which means we have a little over 10 million internet users in the country, and out of which 6.4 million people using social media, and almost everyone is using Facebook, which is the most popular social media app. These stats are 2020 stats. Um, and talking about this context, as an ICT enabler, in 2016, we identified a social problem, which was a crucial social problem actually, where the children and youth were not aware of proper use of social media and tools. So there were many incidences that took place during this period, causing fear and threat to most people at that time. So also it became worse because there was no direction for authorities or maybe guidance laws, because there was no cybersecurity policy in Sri Lanka established at that time. So sadly, we are yet to go there because there is a draft bill presented to the parliament and which is under review still. So in that time we had to take an initiative. So we took the initiative to design a program called IT Yahamaga, the right IT for right reason, educating children how to use internet and social media effectively and ethically. So our objective was to actually to secure the smart generation who was moving on to a smart era, using all smart devices. Also, I must tell you there was resistance and rejection from parents and schools at that time, um, which did not allow children to use these tools or applications due to this fear. So we were lucky enough to persuade the Ministry of Education and continue our program or scale up our program to a national scale, national level. I must be thankful to all our initial partners who supported us during the early stages, LK Domain Registry, Cisco Networking Academy, and also Facebook coming on board during the last 2 years and helping us, supporting us greatly to take this to the next level. So, so far we have been able to educate over 85,000 school students, including university students, and over 1,000 school teachers and principals. Apart from that, actually even Sarvodaya is engaged in online safety programs since 2017 with the support of Arigato International organization. So they have been educating approximately 800 to 1,000 students annually, and the program is conducted at a grassroots level in religious places during Sunday school with the support of the local religious faith leaders and the local community. Now, talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown period, so there had been a problem again during this period, as we all spoke about this, and we still speak about these issues and the context. So what we realized or what we observed during this period was the first 2 weeks, the people were actually idling at home and they were stressed out because of the pandemic, and also only listening to all the negative news, the bad the situation that was prevailing at that time worldwide and even within the country. So they were only focusing on the all the negative impact which COVID brought in at that time. So it increased people's engagement even more, and the time spent on social media during this period. So there was also a trend of small children behaving as gangsters, like children as young as 10 years old. And of course, the situation was brought under control, but the damage was done. And also it created a very negative effect or a negative trend among most of the other young children. Also, the schools started using social media platforms and online platforms for the online education because they had to resume their lessons. So they started using WhatsApp, Messenger, and Viber mostly for this purpose. Also, we learned that National Child Protection Authority has received increasing number of complaints uh, uh, regarding child cruelty, and actually the complaint numbers has gone up by 30%. So probably, which means even the online violence should have an increase, which proves a case that where the numbers were very low early part, they have been receiving on average 8 cases of online violence per month in the last 8 since of last 8 months period. So we had to intervene once again, and we really thought of doing something positive. And we initiated this program called Stay Home Story Campaign, coupled with the competition, to keep positive engagement among people on Facebook and Instagram. So this program was supported by Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka and also Facebook. So what we did was we encouraged people to send in their entries, the creatives, by way of arts, photos, videos, and even their handcrafts. So there were 2 age groups encouraged, below 15 and above 15, and we were able to reach to over 500,000 people at that time, just within a month. And we were able to get over 1,000 plus entries for this program. So what else we did during this period? Actually, we redesigned our IT Yahamaga program, which I was talking about earlier on, combined with Facebook's Rethink Digital program, which fostered responsible digital citizens. So this we conducted as an online webinar to reach a wider community. And again, this was done in collaboration with Facebook and Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka, which is a government body, because we wanted to introduce a platform which was credible. So this program will be conducted via a webinar on this government platform. So it goes into 3 editions, and we will be delivering it as a schools edition, universities edition, and the family edition. So with the experience we had during this COVID period, we thought the families should be educated, and there are lots of things that families need to learn. So with that, we introduced the family edition to the IT Yahamaga program. We had done a pilot already, and we have educated 1,000 children within the last 2 months period. So actually, I'm proud to say that Fusion is the official partner in Sri Lanka to deliver Rethink Digital program by Facebook, which is a global program, as well as we are the trusted partner to report children online violence cases to Facebook. What were the challenges we faced during these 2 months? Out of 4.2 million school students, only 34% have the access to either devices or internet. So they really had connectivity issues, lack of signals, and coverage issues and things like that. And of course, it's very difficult to keep them connected throughout. the attention span is only maximum of 1 hour. And most parents are not tech savvy, hence they cannot help children when they have any problem or anything. So without taking much time, I would like to wind up my introduction, and then I would end up giving these two brief recommendations. Whether you are a tech savvy or not so tech savvy parent, I think you need to be a part of your children's media life. So get involved in your children's media lives, get them to show you show you how their new favorite game works, or show an interest on the things they like. This can lead your children opening up to you about sensitive issues like sexting or bullying. The next point is, be the person your children come to when they have problems online. Make sure your children know what to do if things go wrong online, like they can't figure out a game or access something unpleasant. If they are in the habit of coming to you about the little things, they are most likely to come to you about the bigger things as well. So that's about from this end, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirani. And I know there are questions, specific questions that will be coming to you, but it will be good to put all the questions in the chat box to any of the panelists that you've already heard. I'm speaking now to the viewers. I like very much Shirani's recommendations to the parents. That was very helpful. Thank you, Shirani. And now we're running just a little bit behind, but I'd like to reintroduce Samir, who is going to be presenting the next video and make some remarks on behalf of the Youth Committee of the GNRC, the Global Network of Religions for Children. Thank you very much, Samir. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Rebecca, for giving me the floor. Once again, let me introduce myself first. I'm Samir. I'm from Pakistan, and I'm the member of Youth Advisory Committee of Global Network of Religions for Children 2020. I'm very much happy to hear the views and contributions of adults available with me in this panel for making online spaces safe for children. While accessing online platforms, especially social networking applications and websites, there is no doubt that children and adolescents face a number of risks, which were discussed by my fellow Ikran. In my opinion, empowering children to recognize these risks and strategies to mitigate them can ensure the children's safety in online spaces. Cyber care for children was deeply discussed with members of GNRC Youth Committee by staff of Arigato International. So we, the children, would like to propose some actionable recommendation to improve the cyber care for children. First of all, orientation must be there for parents, teachers, and other caregivers of children, so the sensitized adults could help the children in accessing the online platforms in a safe manner. Secondly, information, communication, and educational material must be developed in child-friendly way to improve children's understanding towards cyber care. It is also suggested that cyber care must be part of school books, so we the children can regularly learn about our own protection in online spaces. Third, social media platform, for example, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter could be used to educate children on online sexual abuse and exploitation. Number four, there must be child-friendly reporting channels where children or their parents can report the unpleasant incident of online sexual abuse and exploitation. Me and my fellows from the GNRC Youth Committee have recorded a video on our views about online safety of children. So let's watch the video. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samir. Now we will look at the video that Samir has just introduced. Thank you very much for those recommendations, Samir.
What can all of us do to protect children from online exploitation? Let's see.
I would recommend that we should orient the children, teachers, parents about the cyber care. We can also use Instagram, Twitter, Facebook to educate the children on online sexual abuse and exploitation.
Second, create a unique password for each and every online accounts you have, because a strong password can help you to prevent your personal information from bad guys. Also, keep communication with your children open and speak up if you suspect someone is bullying him or her.
The parents should guide their kids to find another hobby rather than being online the whole day. I think children are sensitized about what cyberbullying is and what sextortion is, and they are aware of what these things are. It will be very hard for them to get cyberbullied.
Parents have to keep an eyes on their children, on what they are doing online. Parents have to tell us about the negative impact of these platforms. And if you are the victim, you as the young people, and you know that you are the victim, maybe you share some photos or videos. First of all, you have to be strong. You don't have to blame yourself. And you as a parent or you as a caretaker, if you see your children is the victim, you don't have to blame him or her. First of all, you have to put yourself on his or her shoes.
These are just a few ideas to help your kids stay safe and healthy while growing up in this advanced digital age. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir and Ikran, again for your contributions and for the suggestions today. I've enjoyed very much the two videos, and I hope everybody out there viewing this webinar have also enjoyed the videos. And now we will turn to the next session of our webinar, which is designed to engage the panelists in more of a discussion, but we have three people that we want to hear from who are very knowledgeable, have a wealth of experience and information to share with you. First, the person who will be leading this discussion at this point is my colleague, Dr. Susan Bissell, who is a Canadian and senior fellow and visiting scholar at the Harvard François Xavier Bagnoud Center for Human Rights. But she was many years with UNICEF until the end of December 2018. She was with UNICEF in many parts of the world, working in places like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India. She was also with the Innocenti Research Center in Florence, Italy, that's part of UNICEF. She was appointed global lead for UNICEF's child protection work from 2009 until 2015, where she became the founding director of the Global Partnership and Fund to End Violence Against Children. She has always been focused on the safety and security of children and collaborated on the documentary film A Kind of Childhood, and was awarded an honorary professorship at Barnard College at Columbia University. She has received many awards and recognition that will be posted on our website for all that she has achieved in her professional life. And she's still very active. So we wanted Susan, who has worked with Arigato in the past, to engage the discussion with the other two members of this particular session or panel. And the second speaker that we're going to be listening to is Rabbi Diana Gerson. She is Associate Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis, and she is going to be speaking about her work to advance the New York Board of Rabbis' leadership role in confronting family violence, sexual abuse, and the exploitation of children. And she's worked very much across many faiths. She's been working with us for some time, that is Arigato, and attended a number of international conferences on the issue of online safety for children, including our own Global Network of Religions for Children's 5th Forum that was held in 2017 in Panama. And at that time, this issue was discussed with the over 500 participants that were in Panama for the exclusive issue of how to end violence against children and their role, that is faith communities and the other participants, their role in ending violence against children. I have not said all that Rabbi Gerson has achieved, but you will see that she has a wealth of experience. She was also in our conference in Abu Dhabi, as was Anjan Boshe. Anjan Boshe will be the last person on this particular session for this discussion. He's UNICEF's specialist on child online safety. He serves as a child protection specialist for violence prevention and online protection in the child protection section of UNICEF headquarters in New York. He provides, in other words, technical support and guidance to all of UNICEF field offices around the world, and also partners with with partners. And he's also involved in managing or co-managing the global program to build capacity to tackle online child sexual exploitation under the We Protect initiative. He is the current focal point for the ongoing work in this area. He has over 17 years experience in the prevention of online child sexual exploitation and abuse, and has been a resource person for governments, international organizations, civil society, private sector, and law enforcement. And there are many more things to say about Anjan's professional background. So I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Susan Bissell, Rabbi Diana Gerson, and Anjan Boshe for this particular session, that we will have a good half hour for this part of the webinar. So please, Susan, you have the floor. For some reason, Susan's microphone is not working. Here. Can somebody help us with
I think we got it.
Okay.
I think we have it. Thank you for the warm introduction. Hi to everybody on the panel, and a warm welcome to everybody who's joining in, and to my fellow sessionists, to Rabbi Gerson and Anjan, also a warm welcome and hello. So I really want to thank very much the young people who have already spoken here in this session, in the earlier session, and in this webinar. And I think that there are some gems of wisdom in what all of the previous speakers have said. And I want to pick up on a couple to kick off this interaction with my fellow panelists. And the private sector has been referred to, so I want to really maybe be a little bit bold and provocative here, but I would very much like to see at the leadership level of the faith-based sort of leadership across faiths and tech leaders having some kind of conversation, because I think we're at a point here where it's not enough is being discussed, and there are these two leadership areas need to come together, and I think have a respectful conversation about what is going on when it comes to children's safety and security. And I think that can be put in a very positive way as well. You know, we know the advantages of the internet. We know it's being accessed much more right now. But we know that there are some shortages too. So let's see leaders of faith and tech leaders come together. At the local level, I think that there is a lot that community-based leaders of faith can do with local internet service providers. And what I am thinking about, and I think that Samir, you mentioned this in particular, and also Sharani, but a lot of this is about education. It's about getting information out there. It's about a conversation. So what could local internet service providers do in conversation with community-based faith leaders in order to educate parents and young people about what is actually going on with this technology? I would like to see, and this picks up on your point as well, Samir, and I think Ekron mentioned this too, I'd like to see young people creating education material for young people. I mean, who better? You're experts on your own lives. You're experts on what happens in this area. You maybe have experienced something. So let's see child-friendly materials produced by children and youth. And then finally, and this is the boldest thing, Rebecca, that I want to say, I've been saying it for a few years. John, I think you've heard me say this before. I would like to see every device that is created, be it a smartphone or a computer, come to whoever purchases it or receives it as a gift, preloaded with material that talks about the safety and security of children online. This doesn't infringe anybody's rights. It's low cost, and I think it would essentially impact the lives of many, many who don't know that this is a danger. With that, I'm going to turn to the wonderful Rabbi Gerson and see if you might react to some of that. And I'm sure you've got a million ideas of your own, many of which I've heard and have been inspired by. So over to you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Rebecca, for this wonderful invitation. Arigato for your leadership in this field. We don't go this road alone. That is one thing I know for sure. And the voice of young people, most importantly, needs to be heard and amplified wherever we can. I have been spending the last, since March, spending my time training, educating clergy. Clergy, all faiths, denominations, backgrounds, some in New York, some around the globe, as people are really trying to get their footing on all of this, understand what the issues are, understand what the dangers are. Back in March, just to understand, I'm based in New York City. We were the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in New York City, when they shut down the schools, they sent home every child with a device or the expectation to use a device at home. This goes home to children who perhaps don't have a device at home, certainly not a personal device, children who may or may not have access to internet in their home, children who may not have access to somebody to supervise them online. This creates the perfect storm recipe for disaster. And I said to a friend of mine at the Department of Education, a very simple statement: why not send home with the device a very simple one-page how to keep your kids safe online? Mm-hmm. Very simple, pragmatic. You open the device, even as Susan, as you said, everything preloaded, that when you're setting up the device, yeah, we understand. We also need to think about our Wi-Fi capacities and think about child-friendly routers. We need to think about the parental controls. And this is something I think faith leaders can really be helpful with the parental controls. Why? Because parental controls pre-installed on devices or pre-designated on your device is largely connected to your carrier. Who is your provider? In America, interestingly enough, if you go to Verizon, which is one of the largest providers in the United States, do you know they charge you, I think, $10 to add the parental controls? It costs money, additional funds to actually protect your child online. So I think that we have a tremendous role to play in advocacy, education, and really making sure that we create that social safety net around our children. John Carr, one of my favorite humans, once said to me in Geneva many, many years ago, and he said it to an entire room full of leaders. He said that when we give children access to the internet, we give our children access to the world. And during this pandemic, children have had the access to education. They've been able to watch nature preserves. They've been able to visit museums. They've been able to do so many things that, think about going back 100 years ago to the last pandemic of this nature, children didn't have that capacity. They didn't have that opportunity. But we also know that there's a danger, because if we give our children access to the internet, we also give the world access to our children. Everybody has the capacity to go back and forth. And so we really need to be aware. We need to be much more tuned into where our kids are And I think when we were in Abu Dhabi 2 years ago, we had a tremendous opportunity with the Interfaith Alliance for Safer Communities to engage faith leaders and tech leaders to talk about the online dangers and child dignity. And I know that that conversation was followed up at the Vatican back last November on the 30th anniversary of the CRC, the Convention on the Rights of the Child. But now where do we go?
Yeah.
Convening that conversation. There's a convening at the United Nations of 17 tech firms. Where's the faith-based voice at that table? We need to be in that room. We need to be sharing what are the dangers. We need to be really involved because we are often the connecting points between policy and local use because we're the safe spaces.
Rabbi Gerson, do you think do you see, looking back even 2 years, more engagement of the faith-based community in this particular issue and in particular during COVID?
Well, I think in a very honest way, faith leaders have been completely overwhelmed. I mean, if you look at my community leaders here in New York, during the height of the pandemic here, we lost over 70 clergy members to COVID-19.
Wow.
Our congregations were overwhelmed, the number of funerals that we officiated at, the number of people who had fallen ill. We have been doing triage as clergy. I mean, trying to figure out the needs of the community in an ever fast-paced, changing environment. But I also saw this incredible resilience.
Mm-hmm.
When the governor of New York called and said we are setting up the treatment center at the Jacob Javits Center, a very large convention center, and it was going to be 2,500 beds. And there was a call put out on a Sunday afternoon asking for religious articles to be donated so they could create basically a sanctuary space, a meditative space, a prayer space at the Jacob Javits Center. 2 hours later, they had more than they needed. They had requested. Because faith leaders at the end of the day want to help. That is our job, that is our mission. And so when their consciousness is raised about this issue, they go, hey, wait a second, I didn't know this is a problem. I didn't know. And all of a sudden can I come and take a class with you? When are you giving another webinar? Where are the resources? How do I find them? And I point them to Arigato International. And I point them to the World Childhood Foundation. I point them to UNICEF. And I point them to the Global Partnership. I point them to the eSafety Office in Australia that's put out a wonderful guide. There's so many tremendous resources, but they're not readily in the hands of clergy.
Right.
That's where we come in. We say, okay, how do we be that bridge, that connector? And that's, I think, the biggest challenge that we have. I think clergy want to be involved. They just are often unaware until it becomes present on their plate. And then they also are often left outside the room. Yeah. And more spaces and more, we're opening more doors and pathways for clergy to enter the conversation. But we need to do that on a bigger scale. I mean, I'm constantly thinking about how we need to be more engaged. I had that conversation with ECPAT USA a year ago. Yeah. About really creating some kind of a clergy council. There are clergy on their board, but there's no clergy council to actually help them to effectuate the lobbying efforts and the advocacy efforts that they need to be doing.
Well, you raised some really excellent points, and I think we need to clone you in many, many places. And I just want to express, and I'm sure on behalf of the whole panel here, condolences for the losses in the faith-based community. That I'm really moved by your comment in that regard. I'm going to turn now to Anjan, and just we'd love to hear from you and come back to Rabbi Gerson. So I'm sure we all have more questions. Anjan, over to you.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Rebecca and Arigato, for giving us this opportunity. And good morning, afternoon, and evening to all the attendees listening to us. And I think the advantage, or perhaps the disadvantage, of coming last is probably everything that you wanted to say had been very well covered. And I just want to reiterate what John had presented, the current scenario through which we are experiencing some of this situation, right? The closure of schools, the access to excuse me, my camera doesn't work, so maybe I just stop that. Yeah. So I was saying that we are seeing a global situation with children spending more time in school, at home, and getting remote learning opportunities beefed up. So in that context of COVID-19, keeping children safe online will require concerted, urgent action on the part of parents and caregivers, school authorities, and as you mentioned, all the digital technology companies and providers, social service workforce, and government. So what we have done is where UNICEF has come up with a technical note in partnership with other agencies that has very clear recommendations on how to respond to this pandemic. And I believe that will be made available through this webinar. And I just wanted to, kind of also reflect on what Milena had said. She really touched on some very important points that I wanted to mention, making a clear distinction between putting onus on children and our collective responsibility. I think, in that context, and she did mention the impunity and the anonymity that this online world offers. I just wanted to add that to that, the fact that the rapid, interactions and the reach and the global connections, which allows an offender to really manipulate and to play target profiles of multiple children at the same time. Which has changed, some of the landscape that we have seen in the past. A grooming pattern could have taken weeks and months or even years. Now, with the facilities that the online world offers, you can actually groom a child in less than an hour. So I think just to add to the point that Milena was saying, and the other point that I wanted to highlight, perhaps that with the need to understand the different risk factors and the underlying causes. We also need to pay attention to the resilience and coping skills of children. That plays a very important part on how we build our interventions. And we know increased internet use can put children at greater risk of online harms, such as sexual exploitation, cyberbullying. But we have to be very cognizant that not all of these risks will translate into actual harm. And children facing other issues in their lives may be more vulnerable. It is important that the measures to mitigate risk should be balanced with children's right to freedom of expression, access to information, and privacy. And keeping children informed and engaged and empowering them with these skills has, quite rightly been pointed out by all the speakers before me, is quite a critical line of defense. And I also wanted to highlight that the use of evidence-based intervention, right? As many of you are aware, over the years, there have been a lot of educational resources and programs that have been developed by various agencies, including UNICEF, to educate children on online risks. We must keep in mind that every child is different and that the socioeconomic and cultural context to which they belong are also different. It is extremely important that we use evidence-based intervention for this and generate more evidence on what works, given the continuous evolution of the online services and tools and their uptake by the children globally. So I can't stress that enough. Why, along with, all the, if we just focus on the educational resources alone as a part of the overall, set of interventions that we must absolutely have, the need for evidence is very clear. And finally, before, I'll not go on to allow other points to come in. But I just wanted to say a collective preparedness to address a problem that demands collective accountability and responsibility. It is crucial that the roles and responsibilities of each and every sector is well defined and the capacity is built for each actor in prevention and response ecosystem. For example, along with, we know that there has been deployment of cutting edge technology in various parts of the world, including mobile telephony and data services, access to mobile multimedia tools, social networking platforms. We need to ensure that the national laws are harmonized with international standards, capacitate the judiciary, law enforcement, social welfare workforce, who provides the response services for victims, and educate parents and children. So it is building on our work on prevention of violence against children that involves a national multi-sectoral approach and strengthening of child protection systems with enhancing the what we really recommend is not doing this in isolation, but approaching our national violence prevention mechanisms and kind of focusing on specific skill set that is required to address the demands and the specific attributes of protecting children online. So I'll stop here with that thought. Hopefully, there will be room for interaction.
Anjan, I'm so tempted because I know your background and where you're working and so on. If you had a 2-sentence message for any young people that are listening right now or participating with us in this webinar, what would you say?
Thanks, Susan. I think obviously we need to be mindful. Obviously, my young colleagues had already given some recommendations for their peers in terms of what to do and what not to do, right? So I think in terms of building their capacity to understand security standpoints, password protection, and not to post information that knowing that this will be, seen and, kind of dealt with or acted upon by anybody, that you post to, and that once you post, it stays there forever, right? So, to act responsibly, it is easier said than done. What I'm trying to say here is that maybe one more thought that I maybe missed out in my previous point is the need for reporting. When something goes wrong, you have to know the channels through which you can report. And when you are online, not everything will be perfect. We need some room for exploration for, to find out. We know adolescents have this tendency to take or to explore new territories. That's perfectly fine. But you also have to, think of your actions, that whatever you do will have some repercussion, right? So be clear about that. And if something goes wrong, know a trusted person or a channel of reporting that you can actually relate this to. So that would be my my message to the young people. And it's an online world. There is a wealth of good out there. There's a lot of information to collect. There's a lot of entertainment to have. There's a lot of positive. So if you occupy yourself with the positive sides of things, perhaps that will be the guiding thought for you or the guiding direction for you. You don't have to worry too much about the negativities and to restrict yourself from going online.
Thanks, Anjan. I think that's a really nice way to pivot briefly back to Rabbi Gerson and then over to you, Rebecca. But this issue of, and I think it was captured beautifully in the video, and it underscores the role of family, parents and caregivers, the relationship between children in their family, knowing you can take a problem that emerges and discuss it with somebody, turn to somebody. And I guess, Rabbi Gerson, I just want to ask you, I mean, you must have done a lot of work, especially in New York during the COVID period, but in terms of family strengthening, communication within families, and it just seems to me this is a really important area.
Absolutely. We know that families are the first line of defense in any negative situation that could possibly emerge. We need to know that we can go to our parents. We need to know that we can go to our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles. In fact, I always encourage parents when they're working with young people to kind of go through the list of who are the trusted adults in our lives. Who can we go to if there's a problem? Can we go to our teacher? Can we go to mom? Can we go to dad? And the children will help to guide us, but the exercise itself helps to remind children that they actually have a circle around them of people who care. And that's a really important thing to think about. And we need to make sure the parents are empowered. They need to know the information. They need to know what the risks are. They need to understand. Those one pages are really helpful in every language we can think of. And that parents really need to know where their children are going online. You know, a child with a device who goes off into a private area to go have a chat with somebody, we don't know who they're talking to. They may not know who they're talking to.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that our devices stay in public spaces. I have a very dear friend. He's got 3 children. They all have devices now because of school. And there was constant responses, you know, the devices don't go upstairs. They don't go to the bedrooms. They don't go to the bathrooms. They have to stay in the public spaces of the household, which is, I think, a really important designation. But to also understand that this isn't just a one-time education for parents either. Technology moves at this crazy pace.
Yeah.
In the same way that legislation will never catch up, that law enforcement will never catch up. We need to constantly be informing ourselves about what are the risks and what are the dangers. There's no one pager that's permanent. We have to be consistently updating the information. We have to be giving more information. And I think Anjan made a really interesting point about how things are permanent on the internet, even after we delete it. I always talk about it like the footprints in the sand. But for young people, it's really, there's a great little exercise, and there's always the story, a biblical story or analogy that goes with it. You go into the public square and you open a feathered pillow. You dump out all the feathers in the public square. Ask the same child to go pick all the feathers up, and they better all go back into the pillowcase. And the child goes, well, that's impossible. It's the same thing with when we put things online. We're never going to get it all back. No matter what we delete, what we do, we're never going to be able to take back what we said, what we typed, what we posted, because before we know it, it's going to be reposted, shared, downloaded somewhere, living on a server. You know, I always think of like in the desert. The UN has taken a really big position on this, and even the Secretary General has posted consistently online the last couple of weeks. Before you share anything online, consider the 5 W's. I'm actually looking at his Instagram right now, and it says, who made it? Before I share it, made it. What is the source of the information? This is really important. Children and adults need to really figure out how to decide if sources are right or wrong or good or bad, and we need to kind of navigate that terrain. Where does it come from? Does it come from a good place? Does it come from a bad place? You know, why am I sharing this? Is this the right thing to share? Is this a good thing to share? Will this benefit anyone? Will it hurt somebody? And when was it published? I find people publishing things that have been online for years. Other people are sharing things that are just this minute. And well, this can apply to all things that we post online, but even more so when we're talking about giving our children these tools that they need to actually be good, you know, good global virtual internet citizens. And that's part of the education, because we want to make sure that we're not posting things. We know 40% of, you know, CSAM online is self-generated. So why am I posting this? Why am I sharing this? Where is it going? Is it going to hurt somebody? And to understand that we may not know all the sites. It's almost impossible to keep up with it. Every day I hear something new. But if we teach good citizenship in that online space, that virtual space, we can really, really, I think, help.
Rabbi Gerson, I'm going to add 2 more W's to that list. Wise words, indeed. And thank you, and Anjan. And with the image of
I'll just add one more point to what Rabbi Gerson had said. You know, I think if you allow me to just come in on one more point.
You know what I might do, Anjan? I'm going to give it back to Rebecca so we have the Q&A, and I'm sure she'll be able to bring you in there. I'm just conscious we've got a lot of, so Rebecca, I'm going to hand it back to you. The image of feathers all over the place in the public square is a very good one, I think, to go out to our audience and our participants. And Anjan, I really hope we bring in your last comment. So over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Susan. I know this is a very interesting conversation, and it seems like we're just warming up when we are at the point of questions and answers, because we've had a really good turnout. There are many viewers with good questions, and I think Silvia Mazzarelli is waiting to take her position now in coordinating the questions and answers. Anjan, we will come back to you. There will be time to add, I think, to what the richness of this discussion. I myself have so much I want to say, but I'm controlling myself for a change. In any event, I'm now pleased to introduce my colleague Silvia Mazzarelli. She is the regional coordinator for the Global Network of Religions for Children in Latin America and the Caribbean region. She's based in Panama. Again, thank you, Susan, Anjan, and Diana. I have so much appreciation for what you all have exchanged and shared. But let's move now to the next session so that we are very disciplined on time. We want to allow for the question and answer period. And then maybe, Silvia, you can also go back to the other speakers for any closing remarks if we have time at that point. So over to you, Silvia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and thank you to all the panelists for this very rich discussion. We have about 25 minutes before the webinar ends. I have been looking at the chat box. There are many interesting comments and questions. Maybe I would just like to start by saying that there are several comments and people that are congratulating the children, especially Samir and Ikran, for their excellent videos, the presentations, their concrete recommendations. Somebody says particularly highlights the importance of one of Samir's points on the child-friendly materials, which is definitely very, very important. I would also like to say that we had with us the vice chair of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, Amal Aldoseri, who unfortunately had to leave, but he just wrote something that I think is very interesting for all of us, and I will read it. He says, I would like to update everyone here on a piece of work of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, which is a general comment on the right of the child in the digital environment, which is extremely important and timely. We plan to put the first draft for public consultation around mid-August, and so this is an invitation for everyone to contribute to this piece of work. Everything that has been discussed here will find its way to the draft. Mr. Carr's point to on the end-to-end encryption, and Susan Bissel's also inputs on the built-in child protection on the phones will definitely be discussed within the working group. So I just wanted to mention this, as I found this very interesting and actually a great opportunity for all of us to contribute and to increase the participation of faith actors in this very important topic. But now going to the questions, I picked one for each panelist, and I would like to start with John. John, if you would like to come back on the screen with your video. There's one for you, which is the following. Can you expand on why encryption is becoming a greater issue? What is the issue with encryption for those of us who are not familiar with it and don't know about it? So if we can please try to keep it short so everyone has the chance to answer to one or two questions. Thank you. John?
And to a much smaller extent on WhatsApp, mainly Messenger and Instagram, 15.9 million child sex abuse images were found and identified by Facebook. Facebook have said, however, that they intend to encrypt Messenger and Instagram in the future. What that means, and this is what encryption does, it means that everything on those two platforms becomes invisible to them. They will no longer be able to identify child sex abuse images, which means in turn they won't be able to delete them, report them to the police, identify the child, help locate the child, or whatever it might be. So that's a huge change. The only reason we know this, of course, is because Facebook have published this data. Other companies are using strong encryption and are not publishing and have never published any data. So it doesn't mean that Facebook is uniquely guilty. But the fact is we know about the scale of the offending because of the information that's already in the public domain. So encryption threatens to hide things that previously have been open. And because they've been open, the police and others have been able to go after the bad guys who've been doing it. This is a huge threat to children's welfare, and it's something that we all need to think about how to tackle.
Thank you very much, John. I would like now to move to maybe a couple of questions for Shirani. There were a couple that are similar questions, so I'll read them. So one is, what are the different ways or teaching methods that we can opt to teach students during this pandemic? And another one that is in the same sort of question is, in normal circumstances, we would arrange cybersecurity workshops in various schools. In COVID-19 pandemic, schools are closed, hence we are facing issues of reaching the students. Do you have any idea other than YouTube, Facebook, to reach them in lockdown situation? Over to you, Shirani.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. I will first try to answer your first question about the teaching methodologies. So I'm really not a professional in that, but then with the experience we have had so far and the engagements we have had, I guess any teaching should be child-centric, and it should have the components necessarily to be innovative, and also experiential and interactive, and also it should be evolving. So I guess even though the schools are closed, looking at these four components, I guess even though we don't have the even though we have to part with these traditional methods of teaching or learning, I guess still children can be kept away from school, but really getting them with these components connected online. Because even online, connecting online for learning and teaching, I don't think you cannot do any of these things other than you are not physically being present in school. Because if you take, there are a couple of platforms, online platforms that are available now, which are being already used. Even in Sri Lanka, the Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the Information Communication Technology Agency in Sri Lanka, which is the government agency, they have introduced the platform which is gov.meet.lk platform for children to do their studies. So it is a kind of a webinar platform. But apart from that, I guess there are a lot of global platforms available, say like Google Meets, Zoom, and Microsoft Teams, things like that. So I guess it will give you a perfect webinar platform if teachers want to get onto. But even without going that far, I guess even in Sri Lanka, we started at a very in a smaller scale. Firstly, to start with WhatsApp and Viber groups, and the teachers were connecting with the children that way. Of course, it was not that interactive like it does on webinar platforms, but it was creating them the platform to connect with the children. So they were posting their tutorials to groups. Maybe we'll say they perform a group of their class. Each teacher has the group of their particular class, and then they were posting the tutorials or the lessons or whatever the exercises they expect children to work on. And the following day, the children were sending it back to the teacher at the very primary level. But now it has gone into the webinar platform level, where that is more interactive, and you can also get children to kind of do their research, which I said, the experiential aspect of learning, where they can be kind of studying, do research online, so that we teach them all the positives of using internet and using these tools. And also you can get them to kind of be innovative, come up with their innovations, be creative while they're at home during this lockdown period. So they also can search the web to see what else the other children have done elsewhere in the world. So it doesn't kind of limit your knowledge or your experimental levels. So yeah, those are the ways, I guess. And it has I guess the children, you don't have to teach them anymore. I guess now the situation has pushed us forward, I guess about 3-4 years. So you really don't have to teach them anymore how to operate a computer or how to operate a smartphone. So the situation itself has created a positive scenario for everybody to kind of take a step forward. That's the answer to your first question. So just touching on the second question of their limitation in going to maybe reaching to schools. So we was facing the same situation in Sri Lanka. So we had to be very creative at this moment of time, and that is where we kind of introduced the same face-to-face program onto the online webinar mode. So we are conducting all the awareness programs now on the webinar platform, and that's how we reach to the children, where you can look at the you can share your slides, and kind of you can have the interactions, and it's more or less like the physical session or the seminar. So yeah, I guess
Thank you.
Answered. Yeah.
Thank you, Shirani. So now there's a question for Milena. Milena, could you please share your thoughts on intergenerational dialogue as a key element for online safety and protection of children? We know you have a lot of experience in this area, so you might want to share some concrete examples from your great work in the region or across regions. Can you unmute your mic, please?
Okay. Yeah. We always try to present the image of surfing together the network with our children. It's much. Sometimes parents ask us, for example, should I invade the privacy of the child? Should I go and see what it is? And I said yes, but you can also show him or her what is your practice in the net. So if I ask, what are you doing? What are you looking? I also show you what I'm doing. What I'm doing. Mentoring is the best strategy, and dialogue has to happen. There is a perception on the parts on the side of the parents sometimes, that the kids are very technologically smart, and so that there is very little that they can say to their kids because they know better, they know everything, they can do anything, but it's not true. Kids need to be accompanied with us, with our mentoring, with our example, with our input. They have to be, as something that said, I believe the rabbi, they have to be they have to trust us. And trust is, I had an intervention with ITU, a panel with ITU last year, and we were just centered in generating trust. We really need to generate trust among the people we love, the children that are with us, and so that anything that upsets them, anything that comes to the digital interaction and surprise them or concerns them, they should know, they should be absolutely sure that they can tell us, and then we have to initiate that. We don't need to just wait to see what the child does. We have to initiate that. It has to become internet, social networks, and technology in general is a part of our lives. Children children were born to that. Some of us, we remember the time when there was no internet. Well, internet is part of their lives of the children, and we have to need it, we have to address it, we have to tackle it in the same way as we tackle everything else. You know, just like a positive opportunity, because internet opens, you know, wonderful things. Internet can be a window to the world, a window to, you know, to universal values, a window to universal culture, but it has all these things that we have to deal with before, and children should not be dealing with it by themselves. That's my first message. Second, I would like to recommend some new material that has come for us to work. ITU, the Child Online Protection from ITU, has published just a set of guidelines, where there are guidelines that have been built, produced in consultation with children, the ones for children, with families and things. So I would suggest that people that are interested can look into the resource. Save the Children has produced 2 guidelines recently on the care that we should have with this in terms of COVID-19, in terms of the pandemic. They are just coming out, and so that's also a very good resource to look for it. And thirdly, ECPAT is not a new publication, but ECPAT has guidelines for community-based, for partnering with community-based organizations and movements to tackle this issue. So there is enough material. We only need to get in motion, get in action, get closer to the children, you know, make them trust us, trust them first, and empower them so that they can become the most wonderful, they can own the cyberspace, the digital ecosystem as part of as a space to grow and become stronger citizens.
Thank you, Milena. Excellent recommendations. And thank you also for sharing with us these new guidelines and resources produced that we can, of course, look at and use in our own work. So now there's a question for Anjan. So during this webinar, it was mentioned, Shirani mentioned actually working with Facebook. But the question is if there are any experiences that you can share in working with some of the other social media companies on this issue. If there's any good practice or any maybe new initiative that is coming up that you would like to share. And of course, if you would like also to add your comment that you couldn't add previously, you can also do that now.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, and thanks for the question. Maybe I'll take the second one first. Very briefly, I wanted to highlight that, the question that Susan posed to me about young people, what the message to young people would be for overall child protection. And I think, the matter of open communication and what Milena touched on, the intergenerational gap and the dialogue, I think that's so critical. And to build that trust that a child can approach the parent and where they feel that the parent might be not knowing enough digitally or technologically to guide them. It's also your responsibility to maybe show your parents, what you do and how things can be done. I think that way, by building that two-way relationship, is so critical. Then you don't find one day your access is revoked. Your parent, I think it's for your own interest. You need to build that capacity of your parents where it's not there to make sure they understand fully what you do online and they can support you with your online journey. I think that's the message I wanted to give to young people. And also in relation to the social network companies, what they're doing, obviously, Facebook by and large is one of the biggest, platforms, right? But you also have Instagram, which is again owned by them. And Google has its own YouTube platform. I think the point here is that I don't know how many of you have heard about the Technology Coalition, which is a US-based initiative that brings all these entities together. And I also want to mention the We Protect Global initiative to prevent sexual abuse and exploitation online. The tech companies form like a core pillar of that initiative. So there is a lot of good practice in terms of sharing information, building their platforms, strengthening their platforms for easier reporting dissemination of messages to the audience. I think that's already something that all the companies are increasing their capacity, particularly in the COVID times. And we know some of the online learning platforms like Zoom is also trying to build those internal mechanisms for reporting issues and incidents. So I think I don't want to single out a particular company. It's a collective effort, but a long way to go. A lot of evidence is required, as I said before, that these companies own a lot of insight and data about what children and other users do online. I think we really need to tap into them in a very meaningful way so that we are able to inform children and our stakeholders better.
Excellent, Anjan. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to Samir. He would like to comment on this. Go ahead, Samir.
So I just want to say that this webinar is too much lucky for me that I'm here and sitting with you all panelists, which are experts and working for the online, working to protect children from online risks. So I just say thanks to everyone and thanks to Arigato International that you are working with with children and also collab with children to and also invite children in this kind of webinar that they come here and say that what they learn from these kind of the cyber care, what they have the talent about what are their talents, what they think about what gonna be changed. So I just say that thanks Arigato International, thanks to Arigato International team that they are working too much good. And also they are also working with us kind of children and making us proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. And at Arigato, we are very excited to be working with you on this and hope that we can continue working with you and many others around the world. But now we have 3 more minutes. And before giving it back to the microphone to Rebecca, there's one more question that I think is also good to end with this, or couple of questions. And I would like Susan and Rabbi Diana to give us some thoughts on the following. So one question has to do with it's with regard to the commitment of religious leaders and faith actors, right? So there's one question that says, with regard to the commitment of religious communities and with a view to complementarity, is there a common platform which gives an overview of the actions carried out by religious communities in this area, and which would enable best practices to be shared and to be exported and expanded elsewhere in the world? And then there's another question that also is a good question to end with, which is how can we continue promoting and encouraging more engagement and participation of faith actors, especially in these multi-stakeholder initiatives and working groups that exist. So Milena mentioned, for example, the ITU guidelines, and there are several different actors. Unfortunately, I must say, there's none for faith actors. There's one for children, one for parents and educators, one for the industry, one for policymakers, but we're lacking one for the faith actors. Maybe that could be an initiative we could be working on all together. And then, so there are several initiatives and platforms going on. So how can we encourage more participation and engagement of faith actors? So maybe Susan, and then we'll end with Rabbi Diana Gerson. Susan.
So I'm going to give, let's see here. Am I live? Yeah. I'm going to cede most of my time to the rabbi because I think this is a good ending to this. I'll simply say I would highly recommend that Arigato take a lead role in this and in some kind of convening. So congrats on this webinar. I think it's a beginning, a first step, but I would really like to see a leadership role played by this important organization. Rabbi Gerson, over to you.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Let's see. This is a really big problem. If you look at the faith world, we tend to be what my mom used to call calculated clutter. We are all kind of working around each other. We're all kind of in our own spaces, but we're often in silos. We're not always at the same table. One of the only places you find all the faith communities at the same table working continuously over a long period of time has been really Religions for Peace. Religions for Peace has been around for 50 years. They are really leading in so many ways, but they're not necessarily focused on this space, which means that there's a lot of opportunity. Arigato International's work has been always focused on the needs, rights, and protections of children. And if you go to the Global Network of Religions for Children Forum, I was at the 5th Forum in Panama with Susan. This was the space where faith leaders could, A, bring their experience, learn, and make commitments. So Arigato is really, I think, the leading convener in this space. How do we now amplify that message so that it's not just individual faith actors and leaders, but really how do we engage the faith movements, the denominations? How do we get the Anglican Communion involved and the Episcopal Church and the Reform, Union for Reform Judaism and across those spectrums? That's where I think we need to go, because it's when you get into the larger organizations, we start to get that grassroots on the bottom and the large organization on the top, and somewhere we will meet in the middle. And that's the goal, because most of us live somewhere in the middle. We get the information from our denominations. We're trying to sustain our local communities, and we need to be better coordinated. My mom's statement about that calculated clutter thing always sticks in my mind, because often we're not engaging on that day-to-day growth, that day-to-day interactive level. However, I will say this: the New York Board of Rabbis, we've been around for about 139 years. We're a very young Jewish organization. But we have a robust interfaith network. And we work very, very closely with faith leaders across the spectrum. When something bad happens in one community, it's not a phone call that says, oh, we need to try and get everybody together because something bad has happened and we need to bring solidarity. When something bad happens, I usually get a phone call. Like if it's something that happens in the Jewish community, I get a phone call from somebody outside the Jewish community first. It's a reverend, it's an imam, it's a priest calling and saying, hey, something bad's happened, how can I help? And therein lies the difference. We need to have those partnerships. We need to have those alliances, those relationships, those bridges now, before the crisis. This way we're working together in concert. This way we can really make a difference. And so that happens on a grassroots level. It happens on a large scale level. And again, we need to build that bridge from top down and bottom up. And Arigato certainly fills that space. Because if you look around the room at any of the forums, you see it's, as my boss will say, here comes everyone. And here comes everyone on behalf of children, to me, is the greatest gift. So thank you for asking the question. Thank you for providing this sacred space for all of us today. We're very grateful.
Thank you, Diana. And we are definitely very much committed to continuing this conversation and continuing working on this very important topic at global level and at regional level. I just quickly want to share that at regional level, we are working to follow up to concrete recommendations that the faith leaders recommended and defined in while we were working towards the Abu Dhabi forum. And so now after Abu Dhabi, we're coming back and going back to those recommendations and trying to implement those recommendations. And we're set up a very exciting initiative with great partners in the region, faith-based partners and non-faith. And we hope to continue working with you all. And now, Rebecca, over to you for the closing.
I'm very grateful for this amazing conversation with so many wonderful people, friends and colleagues. I know the viewers, the majority of the viewers are still with us. And what I'd like to say is thank you to all of you for making this time in your life and in your day to share this experience with us. I think we've all learned a great deal. I'm very thankful in particular to Samir and Ikran. I think their voices are very important to keep us on our toes. And I have to say, one of the challenges is that we constantly talk about parents and caregivers. But I remember very well in the Dominican Republic when the children spoke, and I'm saying this to Samir and Ikran in particular, when the children spoke to us, they really created a shift in the understanding in the audience, which was, in a perfect world, we may turn to our parents, but we don't always live in a perfect world. And so the religious community, the faith-based groups have to come in and take their place and play the role, be that moral voice, be that leader at the local community, in the local community, that can also provide that protection for children. Because as the children told us in the Dominican Republic, and young ones at that, they said, our parents are not always there. They're out working. They're not always there. And even right now during the COVID, many parents are not at home with children. And so that's the reality, and that is something that we have to take into account. But the rich discussion today has really inspired me, inspired my colleagues. I don't think I can add anything more than saying thank you, and please join us again. We plan to organize a major webinar in November when we normally do the World Day of Prayer and Action for Children. We are going to also organize a webinar or a series of regional webinars, we haven't decided exactly yet, on different topics that our network has said is very important to address at this time. And COVID-19 has changed all of our lives and causing dramatic changes in so many ways. Just yesterday I was reading the high mortality rate that's expected now because the vaccines are not being conducted. Children are not being vaccinated like they should be. And that's another casualty or consequence of the COVID-19. I said earlier, we at Arigato developed a global campaign for faith communities to address the COVID-19 in the most efficient way possible. We have put together very nice materials, and that is available on our website for parents, teachers, faith leaders, children. These are all available on our website, arigatointernational.org and or .com. In any event, please go to that, and I will also tell you that we will summarize and provide a report on this webinar and also put all the relevant materials for your access. So again, that will be accessible. John, I have a zillion questions to ask you. One of which is, what do you think the tech companies are doing that is right and on time? I know that we have a lot of interest in convening the tech companies together with religious communities, as Susan has suggested. I think that Arigato is a good place for convening such a group. We always work in an interfaith manner, whether we're talking with children or talking with religious leaders. We always make it interfaith. And I think that bringing the tech companies on board would be wonderful. We don't know if they will do so. We don't know if we are able to bring them to the table, but they sure have a responsibility. And that's one of the first questions religious communities ask. They say, where are the tech companies and what are they doing? I have followed this discussion, John. I've followed your presentation many times, and I still cannot tell my mother at 90. My mother is on Facebook. She does her all day long. She is on her iPad, and she sometimes is susceptible as well because of the subtle ways that there are hackers out there and there are people out there in subtle ways, So what are the tech companies doing, and can we get a space to engage with them? Can we make that space, as Rabbi Diana was saying? Arigato is willing to convene that. So I'm now getting passionate, and it's way past our time, past our bedtime for Samir and others in the Asia region. Thank you all. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Shirani, for being the understudy and coming in at the last moment. That was fantastic. The show went on after all. So thank you, John, Susan, Diana, Samir, Ikran. Thank you all, Anjan. I don't know who I'm leaving out. Milena, and everyone else. Sylvia, you always do a good job in pulling us all together with the questions and answers. And stay tuned for the next time. We will always reach out to you. And thank you, Zipline, for being there for us today, and Sandra for coordinating the youth committee. Sandra, that we couldn't do it without you. And if I've left anyone out, I'm very sorry. I think I've included everyone. So thank you again, and see you next time. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.